Well, welcome back everyone to Kitchen Table TCG. I got a fun video for you today. We're going to talk about Crucible of War Unlimited. I'm going to give you a guess at where I think the market is going to fall on release day, like release week. I'm not talking about pre-order prices or anything like that. I'm talking like everyone gets their boxes. This is the price. Basically, where we were last week for Monarch Unlimited, right? Like the product is out there, cards are selling. Where do I think will fall for Crucible of War? What will the prices be? This is utilizing all my data that's part of my Patreon. You get access to this collection tracker, whatever. And what I do every week is I go through and I look up all the cards in the set. You guys know this. And so what I've done is taken this data that I've utilized and also looked at how the market reacted to Monarch Unlimited. So because of the data that I have, I'm able to look at this stuff in a different way and apply some percentages and some different growth things. And so I think this is a good shot at it. I think it's a good guess at it. Let me tell you a little bit how I came to the numbers, and then we'll hop into some stuff. So this is kind of how I came to think. So basically, my theory behind this is that we can look at how the market reacted to Monarch Unlimited with a first edition already out. And I know this isn't perfect. Like I know this is not like a perfect scenario because Monarch Unlimited did come out so close connected to first edition. That is certainly at play here. But I do also think we can really look at the box EV of the other sets, which sits to be around like 125, 130, 140. It fluctuates upon the day. And I really think that this target right here, about 140, 150 between, is really where we'll see EVs pop up of Crucible War on release week on that week. So I think it'll eventually dip down into like the 120s, and that's kind of where things kind of fall for these unlimited sets. So I do think that's where, so I wanted to start there. Like that was my target. Like how do we get to a box EV that is sitting in like the 140, which is where we were last week on release week for Monarch Unlimited. We were sitting about 140. So that was kind of my target. And then I kind of took percentages of cards, compare them like to Monarch and kind of took a look at like the percentage of the cold foil and how it plays. And I applied that to a lot of the Crucible cards. And then I also took into effect a little bit of like, what card, one of the nice things is we have with Crucible is we know what cards are playable. Like we know the cards that are like the ones that are going to be like the sought after. So that allows us to see what the actual value cards might actually be. So this utilizes all that data. Again, thank you to the patrons who support me and allow me to do that. So let's take a look. This is where I'm thinking things are be, first off, we'll call, sealed product will be about 80, 90 bucks, whatever. I'm going to say that the Arcanite Shard is going to be at 500. Now, I kind of debated this, like going back and forth. 500 seems to be, as a fable, the unlimited starting price, right? Like the heart never really goes below 500, although I think last week it was. Since like we've kind of grown and the game is in demand, the heart is always sitting around 500. The eye is sitting around 500. That's where the Great Library of Solana has fallen to start, is around 500. I think that's a good guess at the starting price. Now, that being said, like those other ones are generic, right? So they can be put into all these decks. The Solana is not, it is light, but Arcanite Shard is tied to a specific hero. It is a Viscerai specialization, and that might affect its value a little bit. So I could see this and actually being a little softer than the other ones in the future, but I still think it will start out around that $500 point. Looking at the legendaries, right, there's not much to talk about. I do want to mention that first and foremost, I don't believe that 20 Blade Extended will be in the set. I really think 20 Blade Extended, based upon Monarch Extended arts being not in Unlimited, I really don't think they'll put 20 Blade Extended art in, so I'm not going to include that in the price points. If you see any of these negative numbers, that's because on my collection tracker, I have them labeled as negative numbers so that nobody gets confused between first edition and Unlimited right now. So that's what that is. So I just think 20 Blade is not going to be there, so it's not going to be calculated. Now, I think Cheyenne historically has lined up with the Shard. They've bounced back and forth. At one point, Cheyenne was more expensive. At one point, the Shard was more expensive. But they kind of balance each other out. So I'm going to leave Cheyenne at the same price as the Shard. Now there is some questions to this too, like with Unlimited being the player set and Cheyenne not really being a playable hero. Is that going to hold true? Is that going to continue? But I think that's offset by the idea that like Viscerized specialization will suppress the Shard as well. So I am going to go ahead and say they're probably going to end up being about the same value back and forth. In my mind, a collector who wants a Cheyenne is going to prefer the cold foil version, but that's not to say that like somebody who can't afford Cheyenne is not going to want to collect the rainbow foil, which I'm sure is going to be awesome. So I'll leave it at 500. Now the tunic, it's like, what do you do with the tunic, right? Because a crew neck, right? The first edition crew neck is what is that sitting at right now? Like 500 if I remember right. A first edition crew neck is sitting at 450 right now, which makes it more expensive than the rainbow foil from Unlimited, which is this is a reprint. This was in WTR Unlimited as a rainbow foil, but in Crucible it's a non-foil in first edition, and it's more expensive than the rainbow foil. It's very confusing if you're a new player. But here we'll have a Crucible of War crew neck Unlimited non-foil, which would make this the least valuable, in my opinion, of all the tunics. So I think that this tunic will land about half the value. It'll be interesting. I think $100 will be the starting point. That'd be about half, a little bit less than half the value of a rainbow foil one. The question is, how often does this pop up, right? Like, because it's not one in every four, because a legendary is not one in every 4 boxes. It's just different. So I think I don't think there's any way that the non-foil unlimited version can approach the foil limited version. Sorry, the foil unlimited version. So I think $100 will be kind of where the tunic ends up, which is great. Like, I want this tunic to be as cheap as possible because players need the card, and I'm sick of the excuse of the tunic being too expensive to play. So as cheap as we can get the tunic, I'm in for. Now we talk about the majestic rainbow foils. So I played around with the prices. That's why you see a lot of them. The prices on the right are the ones that I'm kind of going with. So let's take a look at these, like the Majestics. They're going to be in rainbow foil. This is the only time they're in rainbow foil. So it's kind of nice because we know what cards are playable. So I do think like Crater Fist is going to be less than Skullhorn. Breeze Rider Boots, these are all percentage tied to the card prices and the way that I did it. So Courage of Bladehold, let's call it 140. I think this card could approach higher. What I've done here is like I put in my prices that I was guessing at, and then I had to like reevaluate based on the EV. Like at the end, again, remember we wanted to hit this EV. There's no way the EV of Crucible Unlimited is going to be $300, right? Like this number needs to be in the 140s. So then I kind of took my guesses, and then I went back through and I had to look at it a little bit to pop the prices down to hit that EV. So 140 is kind of the guess. I think this one could skew higher. Just simply because Courage of Bladehold is $1,000 card in cold foil right now. So I don't know, 140 doesn't seem too crazy actually. So we'll call it 140. The Courage of Bladehold is definitely going to be an interesting one to see, like, because I hear players say all the time that they can't play Dorinthia because they want to play with Courage and they can't afford it. So that'll be interesting because this price would be about the price of a first edition right now. Non-foil is about 175. So it'd be really interesting to see where that price point holds for the rainbow foil from Unlimited. Viziatronic, I'm putting that with the 52 crowd. Same with Perch Grapplers. Blood Sheath is typically, one of the higher value cards. It's less than Courage. So we'll land at 115. Metacarpus Node, these are kind of the mid-tier ones with Gambler's Glove. And then, so that's the equipment. So the equipment ranging from like 55 all the way up to 140 for the Courage of Bladehold. And then we get into like talking about some of these other cards where it's like, oh man, looking at some of these like Arc Smash, nobody plays it. Who's going to really spend $5 on the rainbow foil? But percentages compared to first edition, this is where that would land. based on the other percentages of the card. So all in all, your average rainbow foil. Oh, we want to talk about Spoils of War. Yeah, like what's the Spoils of War? $38. Like I don't think he's gonna go lower than that. This is where I start thinking like some of these higher value cards could be underpriced on this list. Some of the lower value cards could be overpriced because what I'm doing is taking the first edition prices, which have this idea of like investors and not just playability. So keep that in mind too. I'm just trying to be transparent with how I'm guessing here. But I do think like Spoils of War, yeah, like here's the thing, like Spoils of War being less than 20 blade doesn't make any sense. So something didn't get calculated right there. So let's call Spoils of War, let's call it like a $55 card, and then 20 blade we'll call it like a $35 card, something like that. Bounce that around. I don't know. It's kind of weird because Spoils of War is such a play, but so is 20 blade. But Spoils of War is more expensive and is played more often than 20 blade. So interesting stuff. It kind of was all tied to that first edition stuff. Like Rattlebones and Dread Triptych, they're being, they're going to be utilized in Chain and in Classic Constructed. How's that going to affect things? So lots of interesting stuff. Your average would be sitting at like $31, which is, kind of, I think it's even a little bit higher than the average I put on Majestic Rainbow Foils. So the Majestic Rainbow Foils from Unlimited Monarch are sitting around $20. Now, the reason that the Crucible ones I have higher here is because there's more equipment, and I think that that's going to be important. I think a lot of people need the equipment, so I weighted the Majestic Rainbow Foils a little bit higher than I did the non-foil Majestic. So, and also in Monarch, really the biggest reason in Monarch, you have so much money in the EV wrapped up in the legendaries, right? But that EV has to go somewhere. And where does it go in Crew? Well, in Crew, it goes to the Majestics because there's just not that many legendaries. So it goes to the Majestics, and specifically the equipment is where that money goes. So looking at the Majestics, then the non-foils, I kind of kept in line this like average of $5 is what I was shooting for. And so percentage wise, that puts these all kind of, like an $18 Courage non-foil, like a $9 Visiertronic. Let's see, we're Spoil of War sitting at like $10. So still, still decent value, but definitely much cheaper and ability for players to hop in and play. Which is really good, really great. So average at $5. So then the rares, I just kind of wanted to take an average of like $4. I think this will be interesting to see the heroes. I honestly don't know what to do with the heroes because it's like the Rainbow Foil first edition is going to be the collector side. So these will obviously have those will have a premium over the other Rainbow Foils, but I don't think it's going to skew the average over this kind of $4 range. So in the calculation of the EV, I just wanted to be around $4. So that's why I popped in there. These numbers don't really matter. I just kind of placed them so it was an average of $4 because that was the average of a Monarch rare, which would be about the same as what I want. And then I did the same thing for the rare. So let's get looking at the EV then. In this EV calculation, your average Majestic foil will be sitting at $31. The non-equipment would be, so this must not be Rainbow Foil. The average Majestic non-equipment then would be sitting at $3.36 compared to the Majestic equipment being $8. Is that accurate? Yeah, I think that's accurate. Just make sure I have this set up. I haven't really divulged and set up a ton of that would make sense. So in the EV, I really think we'll land at the same EV as most of the other. Where's my EV tab? I think we'll land at the same EV as most of the other sets. I just think it's going to be easier for us all to price the cards and to see where things fall. So your box EV then I think would be $145 around there. And again, this one doesn't really matter as much because of the legendaries. So without the Legend and the Fable, that's where things really get interesting in this set, is because you can open, you don't need the Fable or the Legendary. This has been historically, if you hit a Majestic Rainbow Foil, then you're doing good. And the same thing with Crew in first edition. If you hit a Majestic, you really have like a 30% chance of hitting like your money back of a box, because if you hit a Majestic, you're doing good. It's just a different set. So that's my video. Again, if you if, this is like one of those things where it's going to be fun to really see and track the values of this stuff, and if that stuff interests you, maybe my collection tracker would interest you too, and you can support the channel in that way. So head on over to patreon.com/KitchenTableTCG if you want to support that. But I'm super excited for Crucible of War. I can't wait to do box openings again and get that stuff into the rotation, do case breaks, and so patrons be looking out for all that stuff as we approach Crucible of War in September. I just wanted to take a stab. If you're like on the fence about playing and you're like, I can't afford, just know that like Crucible Unlimited is coming, and it's going to be way more affordable. You know what I mean? Like that's going to be a really good thing. So the rest of you guys, be kind to the people around you, and I appreciate you guys, and have yourself a great day.